Welcome. Today is the 29th day of Sivan. Tonight actually is Rosh Chodesh, the first part of the new moon of Tammuz, and it is also the 5th of July. And we're going to be looking at the 7th reading of Parshat Korach, wrapping it up. In the 6th and 7th readings together, after all the pain and tribulations that surrounded the priesthood in our Parsha, so the Torah ends with what are known as the gifts or donations that will be given to the priests, to show that this is not just something that is not just decreed by God, but also the donations come from the people, that it's a two-way street, that people are interested in it. They want the priest to serve on their behalf in the tabernacle. This has a lot to do with our spiritual relationship with God, but we're not going to get into it right now. And in the 7th reading, the Torah describes the relationship between the priests and the Levites. And one of the most interesting verses, it's interesting because it doesn't perfectly work grammatically. It's like a verse that right away you see there is something amiss. It's not the way we would speak. And the verse I'm referring to is Numbers 18:23. I'll read it in English. In English, the translation is always done in such a way that this problem with the diction is solved. The grammar is not, you wouldn't notice it. But I'll try to translate it the way it sounds in Hebrew. So, in English, in Hebrew, it's Va'avad Levi hu et avodat Ohel Moed. And in English, you would have to translate it as, and the Levite shall serve he the service of the tent of meeting. The Levite shall serve he. There's this he there that doesn't belong. The Levite shall serve in the tent of meeting, or the service of the tent of meeting. Why this he there? And this is one of the, again, when you have a verse like this, which doesn't work grammatically, or it doesn't work grammatically so easily, it's to the Hebrew-speaking ear, there's something wrong with it. So there's a lot of room for interpretation. And in the past, you won't find it here on this channel, but you'll find it on my Patreon, patreon.com/mgenuth, M-G-E-N-U-T-H. We had, I think, about a 6 or 7 part series on this verse, because this idea of service can be linked to many different areas. And in Hasidic thought, it's particularly related to psychological service. The type of psychological work that we have to do. Because the word for service is also the word for work. If you're Russian, it's the word rabota. And the avad levihu, the Levite shall serve, is also the Levite shall work he. And when you say that reflective form of he works he, it could mean one of two things. Either it's talking about he being God in some way, he will work him, it just says he, or it could actually be self-reflective and be talking about the Levite himself. In either case, what you end up with is 11 different interpretations that are found in Hasidic thought about this verse, and each one of them pertains to a different category of psychological work that a person needs to be able to do with himself, or if you're going to, I would call it a Hasidic psychologist, these would be things that you would need to focus on to heal in yourself in order to have a good inner life. So and they correspond to the 11 sfirot, which is kind of surprising because we talk about 10. But the reason we talk about 10 is because we usually discount either the crown or knowledge. We don't say both of them together. But in this case, we're going to be talking about all 11, including knowledge, da'at. So in the crown, we find that this means aspirations for that which is beyond. In other words, a person needs to have a yearning to understand that which is beyond his physical surroundings, beyond the reality, the physical reality that we live in. There needs to be a hunger, a thirst for that which is beyond. Of course, a lot of that is the religious yearning in a person, which is searching for God, but not only. It's also searching for those hidden dimensions of reality. And it's actually not healthy if a person has no aspirations for this, because in a sense he's living in a form of Egypt, in a form of being constricted and not having horizons beyond what he physically sees. This is true even in a scientist. A scientist also has to have an aspiration to understand the hidden dimension behind what you actually see. And that's how all the discoveries are made. But here we're talking about it more spiritually. It's looking for the spiritual beyond the physical. In wisdom, we have Avada Levihu, that the Levite should work. What are we working on? We're working on nullifying the ego. This ability to nullify the ego, which comes out the strongest when a person is studying and learning Torah. Studying and learning Torah is about being able to nullify myself to hear what God's word is. It doesn't mean that there's no rational side to it and a rational discussion, but first of all, I have to be able to hear what the Torah is saying, and that's self-nullification in order to be able to discuss it. In a certain sense, to join a conversation, you have to be silent first. If you've seen any of my classes on the fourth revolution in Torah learning, when we're opening up Torah to all the nations of the world, one of the things that I usually say to Christians is, you have been out of the conversation about what you call the Old Testament, which we call the Testament, the Tanakh. You've been out of the conversation for 2,000 years. You haven't engaged in it. So you first of all have to have a lot of nullification to be able to hear what we've done, what has happened with it in the last 2,000 years, what we have developed. And there is an invitation in this sense for all people to engage in this conversation. But you have to first of all have self-nullification, be able to listen first before you begin to form an opinion. When we talk about understanding, there we're talking about service with joy. And service with joy is first of all through music, meaning that a person has to have an open heart for music. There has to be in the psyche a service of music, an ability to listen to music, to sing, to not just in the shower, but even when you start learning or when you just finish the day, whatever it is, to enjoy music, especially the Hasidic music, which thankfully is abundant today in the world. When we come to knowledge, this is we said it goes together with crown. So if crown was the ability to aspire to that which is beyond reality, so knowledge is the other side of that, which is to truly aspire to understand reality as it is. And what this really means is being able to tell the difference between our fantasies and reality. This is one of the most important things that a healthy psyche has. It has true rooting in the physical world, and it understands what actually is going on. It's not living in some delusional fantasy. This is called the rectification of the imagination. This comes through labor. What kind of labor? Specifically physical labor. It's not just rectifying the imagination by sitting with someone and working through the different problems we're challenged by and separating out what is our fantasy versus what is reality. This also has to do with choosing a life partner. It has to do with taking care of children. A lot of work has to be done on filtering out that which is unrectified imagination. But much of this comes from physical labor. The earth itself is the source of cleansing our imagination. A simple thing that you might have noticed is, if you've ever done this, if you've ever gone to a farm and actually worked the land, you'll find that very quickly, probably the first night, you'll be dreaming of the earth, because the earth has a cleansing effect on our psyche. In loving kindness, we have the act of giving, a work of charity. What does this mean? It means that charity is not something, giving to others is not something that you do from time to time and with a clenched fist. It has to be something that flows naturally through your psychology. It has to be something that you're always eager and willing to help anybody in need. If the psyche is not open in that sense, there are clogged arteries in the psyche. There are things that don't work, and you might be sick without even knowing what the cause is, but this is predominantly one of the greatest causes. The cause of sickness, psychological sickness, even physical sickness in a person, is that they're clogged. They take in, but they don't give back. They are like, the sages describe this like a mosquito who's constantly sucking the blood out of others, but not giving back anything, except for maybe an itch. When we look at might, here we have the Baal Shem Tov's great principle of being able to serve God out of fear. Fear of God does not mean that you should walk around afraid that fire and brimstone is going to fall from the sky. Fear of God means that there is nothing else to fear. That I've taken all the other sources of fear in my life and I've cleansed them or filtered them out by understanding that if I feel any fear in my life, that fear should be coming from my relationship with God. What is my fear from God? My fear is, first and foremost, that I'm not performing my mission in life. My life is short. I don't have much time. None of us do. We're all limited. We will be forgotten. But there is purpose to life. It's the mission that I need to perform. My fear is constantly that I am not doing my utmost in order to perform my mission. When we talk about the sphere of beauty, Tiferet, there we're talking about refining our character traits. There we're talking about Ibud Orot is the term in Hebrew. It's called tanning hides. In beauty and Tiferet, what we're doing is we're working on our character so that we are a resilient person. We are someone who is outstanding in their morality, in the way they treat others, in the way they talk, in the way they conduct themselves in business, whatever it is. That has to be an incredibly important part of serving God and fixing one's reality, one's psychology. And again, on the Patreon, there's a whole series now. We're up to the 26th lecture on this, on positive psychology, which makes a very important cornerstone of building one's character. When it comes to victory, Netzach, there we have belief in miracles. We actually talked about this last week on Friday, and I mentioned a certain miracle that I've witnessed recently. Belief in miracles is simply the understanding that God runs the world. And because God runs the world, not everything has to be according to natural laws. True, most of the good miracles are clothed within nature, but there are miracles from time to time that also disengage nature, and they go against nature. And those miracles also exist. But a person has to feel, especially when they're down, that miracles happen, that we can come out of the situation that we are in. In acknowledgement, in Hod, we have to work on what's called avodat tama, complete work. Complete work means that whatever task is at hand, I finish it completely, from beginning to end. I myself am severely challenged by this, and it's been almost my entire life's work to fix my sphere of acknowledgement, my sphere of Hod. It's always been a problem for me. I remember my parents saying this to me when I was 7 and 8 years old already. And it's always been an issue. How do you finish? So the best thing I could have done right now is tell you, okay, we've done 9 of the 11, let's stop now. But no, we've gone over time, but let's finish it. Finally, in foundation, we have the concept of shlichus, the concept of my mission in life. This is related to what we said earlier about sweet fear, having fear of not completing my mission in life. When it comes to foundation, it's more about finding my mission in life. It's understanding what I'm supposed to be doing and what my contribution to reality is. And we each have a different contribution. It doesn't serve me very well to look at what others are doing and saying, well, why am I not doing that? I would love to do that. Because God has given each one of us a separate task, and that is related to foundation. It's a thing that you have to work on psychologically to understand what your gifts are, what your talents are, what your abilities are, and then try to formulate what your mission in life is. Finally, we have kingdom, which is duty. And here we're talking about the duty like a king has for his subjects. It's the duty that I have towards those around me, towards my family, my children, my parents, my neighbors, the rest of the Jewish people. This has to do with things that I have to take upon myself to complete. They're not necessarily my mission. They could be smaller in a certain sense, but they are related to it and an outgrowth of it. So we've covered 11 different areas in which a person needs to work psychologically, and these are the different explanations given for this very interesting verse in, again, Numbers 18:23, Ve'avad Levihu, the Levite shall work he. And the strange grammatical formation, which causes the Hasidic masters to talk about these different areas in which we have work to do, in which we have to assign ourselves the task of being a Levite that needs to work on himself in the tent of meeting. Our tent of meeting today, when we still don't have a tabernacle, we still don't have a temple, is the work that we do in order to turn ourselves into a tabernacle for God, in order to turn ourselves into a tabernacle for the soul that we've been given, and to complete our mission in life in the best possible way. So thank you very much for joining this week, and I want to wish everyone Shabbat Shalom and Good Shabbos, and hope to see you next week when we start Parashat Chukat.